some cases. Back now to Hawaii and Terence McKenna. Terence, I thought we lost you for a moment, but I think we have you back. Are you there?
Oh, yes.
Okay. There will be silences during the break, so do not interpret that as we have disconnected Terence. Only if you get a dial tone are we in trouble. Otherwise, just hang in there, okay?
All righty.
All right. I mean, I sat here as I listened to you the first half hour in shock because I realized you were describing exactly what I wrote about. And what I did, Terence, I realized that a lot of people say this quickening, or whatever you want to call it, whatever name you want to put to it, is a byproduct of mass communication. And I began to realize, no, it is not a product of mass communication. Yes, we're hearing about it more and more volumes of it, but in fact, what you are describing is really going on, and I documented that much in my book, in real everyday life, in each one of these areas and many more. I documented the fact that it is not mass communication that is beginning to quicken things, but there is another process at work. Now, I don't know what that is, and I don't know where it's leading. In other words, people will say, well, when we finally get to this crunch point, whatever that is, what will happen? And I don't have that answer. I'm just a talk show host, an observer. But maybe you do. When we finally reach what you call time wave zero, what is going to happen?
Well, the only way to predict what's going to happen is to look at the quality of what has happened as the quickening, as you call it, has begun to accelerate. What it's been characterized by is dissolution of boundaries between classes of people, bodies of knowledge, pools of capital, language groups, so forth and so on. And so it seems to me ultimate novelty must be a situation where all boundaries are dissolved. And of course, what that looks like, I don't know. I don't know whether it's a virtual reality where you become God through the public utilities or exactly what it is. But it's clear to me that the human nervous system is globalizing itself, building a model, a conscious thought on a planetary scale. Tens of thousands of people are participating in this. None of them have a real notion what it's all about, but everyone is serving this sort of unfolding grand design. And, I think the emergence of alphabets was part of the quickening. I think the emergence of hominids out of more primitive primates was part of this quickening. I think this is the business that this planet has been about for a very, very long time.
Are you able to discern any timelines to time wave zero?
Well, yes. I mean, we've been talking about this as a metaphor. What makes me, I hope, a little different from some of the other prophets in the marketplace is I've got a formal mathematical theory that, I mentioned habit and novelty, this dualistic flow.
Yes.
Well, because it is a dualistic flow, it can be portrayed like the ebb and flow of the price of a stock or something like that. In other words, it can be portrayed as a line graph. So I've written computer programs which produce what I call novelty waves. In other words, time-scaled waves that picture the ebb and flow of novelty. And by fitting known historical and paleontological and geological data against these waves at different scales, I was able to finally discern a best fit. But the conclusion that it led to was was very startling to me, which is this ultimate novelty, this transcendental object at the end of time, isn't millennia in the future. It is, in fact, slated to collide with historical necessity sometime in late 2012.
2012.
Now, I know you have some interest in the Mayan calendar.
I do.
I didn't know when I calculated this date that it was the same end date as the Mayan calendar, to the day.
Oh my. Let me ask you this, Terence. What did you input to your database for this computer program? In other words,
What did I start with?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I had a very academic interest in the Qing, which is a Chinese method of divination. And this is, everyone who's looked at this thing has been struck by the fact that it seems to work. And so I carried out a mathematical analysis.
Wait. I don't know what Qing is, and I bet a lot of other people don't either. A Chinese method of divining. What kind of method? What is it?
Well, it's existed for thousands of years in China. It's sometimes done by throwing 50 stalks, or sometimes done with coins. But it's a method of producing a thing called a hexagram, which is made up of either broken or unbroken lines, but 6 on top of each other. So if you're a mathematician, you can figure if it's made up of broken and unbroken lines and there's 6 of them on top of each other, there must be a possibility of 64 of these things. And thousands of years ago in China, there was a vast body of literary commentary built up around these hexagrams, and they have always been presented in a traditional order, a certain way that they are always presented. And I was studying a very academic question, which is this order of these hexagrams a true order, in other words, governed by rules, or is it simply a random jumble sanctioned by tradition? And this very obscure academic question led ultimately to the discovery that the I Ching was a 384-day, 13 lunar cycle calendar. And then from there I realized that this 384-day calendar was actually a nested subset in a fractal timekeeping scheme that was really more accurate and more sophisticated than anything in the West. So what I'm really suggesting here is that in the same way that the West conquered the nature of matter through the elaboration of modern science, about 4,000 years ago in China, a deeper analysis of time was carried out than has ever been undertaken in the West. It's quite...
Oh, Terence, what is your website?
It's at Levity. It's www.levity.com. And then just click on Terence McKenna there. Levity is Levity.
So it's www.levity.com?
Correct.
We'll get a link up shortly.
Well, I think you do. I visited your website today. You've got good people.
Yeah, Keith he does a wonderful job. All right, well, so then you get there and then just click on Terence McKenna and be sure you're buckled in from the sound of what I've heard so far.
Well, the interesting thing, you see, Art, is with a wave like that, you can do what's called retrodicting. In other words, if you have a wave of novelty that describes the past,
yes,
you have to correctly predict the Italian Renaissance, the Greek Enlightenment, the modernity of the 20th century.
Yes.
And so by predicting the past, we've gained confidence that this wave predicts the the future.
That sounds quite scientific. In other words, science is repeatability, and if you can repeatedly demonstrate that you can mathematically show the events of the past, then yes, I would imagine you could project.
Well, so I've been at this since 1975, but the theory is, in a sense, very conservative. It never says what will happen. It says when interesting things are highly likely and when you're just wasting your time.
When you look out or project out toward 2012, what is the magnitude